a good beat. Why aren't you dancing?
Dancing is forbidden. 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 Dancing is forbidden.
Yoo-hoo, running crew, welcome to Dancing is Forbidden. I am Ronnie, lifelong fan of and one-time voice on Aqua Teen Hunger Force. And on this podcast, we are watching through and talking about every Aqua Teen episode. And the episode we are watching through and talking about this week is Season 5, Episode 1, Robots Everywhere.
Well, you know, 2 people were murdered here.
Yeah, we killed them.
Hey, I'm back. I'm back in the saddle again. My friend Steven Tyler told me to say that. You know, from Aerosmith. Well, he didn't really tell just me. He told everybody else at the concert too. But I swear to God, when he said it, he was looking right at me and he winked at me too. So thanks, Steve, for the advice, because Stevie T, he said it best. Back in the saddle again, ready to talk about more Aqua Teen Hunger Force. We're in for a good time today. We've got some clips from Aqua Teen co-creators Matt Maiellaro and Dave Willis talking about this episode. Excited for you to hear those. But before we get into this one, you know, it's a new season of Aqua Teen. New season, new me. Why don't we set ourselves in when this episode debuted? Robots Everywhere coming to Adult Swim on January 20th, 2008. Where were you at this time? Maybe you're in college, slamming some brewskis. Hey, sounds like a good time to me. Maybe you're saying, Ronnie, I wasn't even born yet. I was still just a sperm swimming around my daddy's sack. Jesus Christ. Well, I'm glad you got out of there, because I've seen your dad's sack, and that is not a hospitable environment. I saw it on onlydads.com. Don't go there. I'd like to think that there's one person out there freaking out right now. Like, how dare you insult my daddy's sack, man? Fuck you and fuck your stupid podcast. 1-star review. All right, hey, sorry about that. Look, as for me, in 2008 here, it's 8th grade, baby. It's my last semester of middle school before I joined the big boys in high school. That's where I was. I remember 2008 being a particularly good year. I'm still dating the same girl I told you about back in Carl Wash. We started dating at the beginning of 2007, and we date all throughout this year. So I'm having fun with her, with my other friends. We're a big group having a good time. I talk on the podcast about how when I grew up, you know, we weren't the best off financially, but I think this was a pretty good year financially. We had internet, we had cable, and it's because of that cable that I got to see this episode when it aired. I remember seeing Robots Everywhere as well as the next episode, Sirens. And I was confused by these episodes. Let me explain why. Starting off in Season 5 here, we start with a trilogy of 3 episodes. I mean, yeah, that's what trilogy means. That are focused on Carl. We don't really have too much Aqua Teens in them. In fact, in this episode, Robots Everywhere, we're not even going to see the Aqua Teens. We get them in like a voicemail or something. So I remember seeing this episode, and then I remember seeing Sirens when it aired, the next episode. And I was just like, what the hell is this? Where's the Aqua Teens? Like, when I saw those episodes, I didn't know what they were, but I knew I hadn't seen them before. But then the Aqua Teens weren't even in them. And I'm like, that's it. I'm out. I'm done with this. What the hell are they doing here? So as for me, I was not a fan of these episodes. In fact, these were kind of the breaking point for me to where I kind of stopped paying attention to Aqua Teen a whole lot. And it wasn't just Aqua Teen. I think I really wasn't watching a ton of TV. I was probably on MySpace or something, customizing my profile, picking my profile song. I was busy. I had other things on my plate. But I remember this being a turning point for me. And how do I feel about these episodes now? Well, hey, that's why we're doing the podcast. We're going to spend some time with Robots Everywhere in this one. And we're going to see how this episode is. But before that, you know, we got some other stuff to talk about first. First of all, our Aqua Teen news. Believe it or not, there's actually a little bit of something Aqua Teen related coming our way. I spoke with Dave Willis on July 18th, 2024, and when I asked Dave what him and Matt Maiellaro had cooking, Dave said, we did have a screenplay that we wrote last year that we were trying to sort of do independently, a comedy, so that's Sorry, hold on. Let me retake this. I'll read you what Dave said a different way. He said, "We did have a screenplay that we wrote last year that we were trying to do sort of independently, a comedy. So that's still no. This isn't sounding right. Like this doesn't sound how he said it to me. Let me try one last time here." Dave said, "We did have a screenplay that we wrote last year that we were trying to sort of do independently." Look, we'll be here all day if I try and read this. Let me just play you the clip.
We did have a screenplay that we wrote last year that we were trying to sort of do independently, comedy. So that's still up there in the air with like an independent producer, but we're talking about doing a horror comedy, and we're sort of actively working together again on stuff that we're excited about, and we've got a couple of fun, dumb things that we're actively doing. I mean, we just finished a Carl get out the vote PSA, which is when that's done, that'll be interesting. Probably the least likely person to tell you to vote, and it was hard not to. It was hard not to fly in a lot of those directions, but I think we're still faithful to the character and to what we've been asked to do. But we had a project that we kind of went out there in the world with a little bit, and we're gonna hold on to it for a while and see if things pick up in the world before we go back out with it. But something that we both were actively in love with, and so we'll just see. We'll see how the media world shakes out.
That's right. We're going to see how the media world shakes out. I have to imagine that's Dave dropping an Aqua Teen reference on us. So lots of stuff here. Thank you, Dave, for sharing with us. Right after he said all that, I'm like, Dave, that's great. Thanks, man. Could you read that again as Meatwad, please? And then he hung up on me. So I couldn't get him to say more on any of this, but what he did say is that we have a Carl Get Out and Vote PSA coming our way. Very excited for it. I like hearing Dave talk about kind of, wrestling with the fact that Carl is like this scumbag character that typically you don't want to. You shouldn't do what he says, but in this case, get out and vote. You should. If you're in the United States, I guess. If you live somewhere else, I don't really know how that works. Are you even allowed to vote outside the United States? We do have a monopoly on freedom, so I don't know if you can do that. But very excited to see when that Carl PSA comes our way. I have to wonder if that guy who got mad that I insulted his dad's sack is freaking out about this too. Like, man, don't tell me to fucking vote. Fuck you. 1-star review. Get your voting out of my... get your voting out of my cartoon podcast, goddammit. Oh, look, I'm sorry, guy that I made up who hopefully doesn't exist. Anyways, regardless, hey, get out and vote. Watch that Aqua Teen thing when it happens. Excited for it. Thanks, Dave. Of course, they've got some other projects in the works, and we'll see what happens with those. I'll let you know if there's any movements on those fronts. So that's our Aqua Teen news, our podcast news. Had myself a nice little break. Hopefully you've had a nice break not listening to me for the past month and a half. But, well, if you were on the Patreon, then you were listening because we did do a few episodes on The Room. There is another one coming with Dave Willis as soon as I can get that thing edited up. Also covered the Boston episode over on the Patreon, so that was a lot of fun. If you don't know, that Boston episode was supposed to be the first episode of this season, but then it got cut. So I don't need anyone coming at me like, Ronnie, you dumbass, you didn't even cover Boston. Well, yes, I did, but it was so spicy, I had to put it on Patreon. There was full frontal nudity in that podcast. I was naked when I recorded it. I mean, you can't see, but I guarantee you I was, so I couldn't put it up here. Another thing I did in the past month and a half or 2 months or whatever, over on my Twitch, I was playing through Aqua Teen Hunger Force Zombie Ninja Pro-Am, the 2007 Aqua Teen game that came out between Seasons 4 and Seasons 5, and that is directly related to the episode we're talking about today, because even though Robots Everywhere debuted on Adult Swim on January 20th, 2008, you actually could catch it first on Zombie Ninja Pro-Am. There's a few episodes of Aqua Teen on that game that you can just watch, and they threw Robots Everywhere on there months before it came out officially on TV. So that was actually really cool that if you're like this super fan of Aqua Teen and bought that game when it came out in November of 2007, you got to see a new Aqua Teen episode before anyone else. And I did a little experiment here. I'm like, all right, I'm streaming this game. Well, let me play the episode, right? It's in the game. I'm not just like streaming off of a DVD. It's on the game. You can't fault me here. I'm completely in the right. Well, YouTube cut my stream anyways. They're like, this motherfucker's playing a TV show. Well, hey, it wasn't my fault. It was on the game. I thought I was playing the game by watching it. I thought it was just a long cutscene. I don't know what I'm doing here. But yes, it is a fact. You could catch this episode November 5th, 2007. And also, you will get your stream cut on YouTube if you try and play it off the game. But moving into our pop culture section here, I'm going to be going off of January 20th, 2008, because I compared and contrasted the two dates in pop culture. And here in early 2008 was a little bit more interesting. So let's jump over and see what the heck was happening the week that Robots Everywhere came to Adult Swim. What was going on? Shaking that camera all the way to the top of the box office this week, we have Cloverfield pulling in a fat $40 million this week. Cloverfield, it is like a found footage monster kind of movie where it takes place in New York City, and you're from this first-person perspective because the idea is somebody's actually filming all this happening on a camera. So there was a lot of shake cam in it. I know some theaters put up signs like, hey, you might get motion sick watching this movie. But I remember when this movie came out. I never saw it, so I'll be transparent with you there. But I remember when it came out, and I remember it drew a lot of criticism because people, remember this is 2008, people are like, oh, if that was really happening, if the city was under attack by a monster, you wouldn't just be filming it? Well, now in 2024, we know decisively, yes, people would be filming it, and in fact, Cloverfield is unrealistic because only one person was filming it. If this were real life, instantly on YouTube, you'd have live streams, you'd have millions of uploads coming. Everyone will be filming it, trying to get famous off of filming this catastrophe. So how the tables have turned on Cloverfield. It went from unrealistic to, well, I guess still unrealistic because more people would film it. But something funny about Cloverfield, you know, speaking of unrealistic, is there's kind of like an iconic scene in the trailer where the Statue of Liberty's head goes flying into the streets, right? And they recreated the Statue of Liberty's head with CGI to the exact dimensions of the head. And people complained because they're like, that's not big enough. That's too small. That's not actually the size of Statue of Liberty's head. But it was. They actually recreated it to the exact specifications. But in people's minds, they're like, no, the Statue of Liberty's bigger than that. So a very funny takeaway here when it comes to film or maybe even art is that people want things to look how they think it should look rather than how it actually looks. So I loved that little anecdote about the Statue of Liberty's head to where they had to size it up from the trailer, which was realistic, to play into people's expectations more, even if those expectations are wrong. So that's our top film, Cloverfield. I do want to shout out the previous film, the previous week, which was The Bucket List. And this is a film with two old geezers, Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman, and they're checking items off their bucket list because in the movie, I'm not going to give you spoilers, but one of them's going to kick the bucket. And the reason I want to shout this movie out is because I saw this movie when it came out, and I saw it in theaters. So around this time, I did see The Bucket List. I liked it well enough. I mean, goddamn, it's fucking Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman. What more do I have to tell you? But the reason I saw it is because my girlfriend's mom took us to see it. And that was my first, and I think only time ever meeting her mom because her parents were divorced. Her mom lived out of state. So her mom came to Illinois and picked us up and then brought us to Indiana to see that movie. And I'm sure do some other stuff. She didn't pick us up just to see The Bucket List. But yeah, I definitely remember seeing the movie. I thought it was pretty good. Having said that, I'm very easily entertained when it comes to movies, and also my favorite movie is The Room, which is a decidedly bad movie. So don't listen to what I have to say about movies being good or bad, but do listen to what I have to say about music, because that's where I stand my fucking ground. Let's see what our top album of January 20th, 2008 is.
In the deepest ocean, the bottom of the sea, your eyes, they turn me. Why should I stay here?
Our top album the week that Robots Everywhere comes out is In Rainbows by Radiohead, selling over 122,000 copies this week, which is actually super impressive. Not just that number, but the interesting thing about In Rainbows is that the album actually came out the 10th of October, 2007, and the way this album was released was very unique for the time. It was released as a pay-what-you-want model, and that even included $0 or £0 if you come from Radiohead's homeland of the UK. So this album was out for some time, and you could even get it for free online, but here in early 2008, it was available finally in a physical format, so you can buy it on CD, on vinyl, if you want to actually own it. And that's what's going on here. And even with the album already being out for free, it still shoots to the top of the Billboard charts this week. And I remember seeing this album in stores around this time and being like, I thought that album was for free online. Like, who's buying this shit? Now, in my 30s here, somebody who buys records and things like that, I totally understand why somebody would buy it. But I was very confused as a 14-year-old when I saw this album in stores, because I did know you could get it for free. I was not somebody who got it for free. I wasn't a Radiohead fan back then. I don't know that I am these days. Like, I like Radiohead. I like a lot of their songs, but I don't really ever put any of their albums on. Having said that, I actually think In Rainbows, this record, is probably my favorite album by them. It's very good, especially for later in their career at this point. And I don't know, I just think every song here is worth your time. And speaking of songs, Jesus Christ, it's hard to find a good 30-second clip from this album because all their songs like build and build. So you can't really show that in a 30-second clip. So I had a really tough time finding music to play for you from this record. But it's really good. Check it out. And don't just listen to me, okay? I'm not the only one here who's vouching for Radiohead. If you'll recall, Radiohead frontman Tom York was in an episode of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, the episode Knifing Around, which is amazing. One of my favorite television episodes of all time. Not just of Space Ghost, of any show. That episode is so hilarious. And in that one, Space Ghost, he's a fan of Radiohead. So if anything, check it out for Space Ghost. That is Radiohead in Rainbows. Moving on to our top singles this week, I'm going to do something a little different. We're going to skip those this week because, spoilers, our singles are the same throughout basically this entire season of Aqua Teen. So we'll loop back around to those, talk about those in a future episode. So next up, you know it, we got some video games to talk about. Here in early 2008, there's not a whole lot of exciting stuff. Let me just read you out some things that are happening. We have Rune Factory 2 coming to Nintendo DS. We have Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games coming to the Nintendo DS this past week. Speaking of which, the Olympics is going on as I record this, and I just found this out. How come nobody told me? I didn't know the Olympics was this year. I mean, Jesus. And I told it to my wife. I'm like, did you know the Olympics was happening? She's like, yeah, I'm surprised you haven't seen any posts about it. And that's because a couple months ago, I moved all of my social media apps off of my home screen just to try and use them less. And that worked so goddamn well that I haven't really even used social media at all in the past couple months. So I've been missing out. I didn't know the Olympics was going on where I could pretend to care about sports for like however long the Olympics is. But hey, I do know that Mario and Sonic are not at the actual Olympic Games, because I would have heard about that at least, all right? But here in early 2008, they are in the Olympic Games on your Nintendo DS. There's one game I want to talk about here that is very of interest to us, and this is a little game I didn't even know existed. This coming out January 8th, so a couple weeks before this Aqua Teen episode. This game is called Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, coming to PS2, PSP, and the Wii, baby. And this game published by Capcom, which also publishes Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, which is a game I've talked about on the podcast before. I love me some Phoenix Wright games. You're like this little lawyer guy investigating a murder every single time, and you're getting your evidence, you're talking to the other characters in the game, putting it all together, and then you're nailing down that perp. The reason I'm telling you all this about a different game is because that's essentially what Harvey Birdman Attorney at Law is. It's very much cut from that same cloth. You know, it's published by the same company, so I think they kind of had the okay to rip off Phoenix Wright, but instead of being Phoenix Wright, you're Harvey Birdman from the fucking TV show. You're living in that universe, doing your thing. A big difference between the two games, though, between Phoenix Wright and Harvey Birdman, is the Harvey Birdman game, you have the entire cast joining on and voicing their characters in the game, which is very cool. In the Phoenix Wright games, there usually isn't voice acting, so when characters are talking, it's just like, beep, 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 beep. Like, that's all you get. But in the Harvey Birdman game, not the case. I should mention, though, is that Stephen Colbert did not join back on. At this point, he had left Harvey Birdman because he has his own show on Comedy Central. Stephen, he's doing big things at this point. The Colbert Report was amazing. I loved that show. It's way better than whatever the hell he's doing now. I don't even know, some late night talk show thing. It's The Late Show, maybe? I don't even know. Don't even Google it. Don't even tell me, because I don't care, because the Colbert Report was way better. But enough about that. We do have this Harvey Birdman game. You're Harvey, you're solving mysteries, talking to all the beloved cast of the show. However, this game did not get very good reviews at all. It's very, like, upper middle reviews, like 6.5s out of 10 is what it's getting. But you know what? I mentioned earlier in this podcast, I finally played through Aqua Teen Hunger Force Zombie Ninja Pro-Am, and that game got very similar reviews of like 6.5s basically. Like, that is not considered on the surface a good game. Neither is this Harvey Birdman game, but having played the Aqua Teen game, I liked the Aqua Teen game as an Aqua Teen fan. So I'd have to think that if you're a big Harvey Birdman fan, you're not playing this for the gameplay. You're playing it because you like the show and you like the characters and you want to spend some more time in that world. So I'd like to think that Harvey Birdman superfans who played this game probably liked it just like I liked the Aqua Teen game, where yeah, the gameplay wasn't that great, but all of the Aqua Teen stuff around it was fantastic. All the references to the show, seeing those characters was so fun. It's probably the same here. So Aqua Teen getting a game back in November of 2007. Harvey Birdman getting his own game in January of 2008. A pretty exciting time to be an Adult Swim fan. And speaking of which, let's see what's on Adult Swim this night. Which, by the way, before we jump to Adult Swim, I forgot to say, at the beginning of this year, Court TV is rebranded as True TV. So just to, again, further set you in the time of when this is happening, when it used to be all about court drama stuff, and then it went to basically just Impractical Jokers every single day, which I'm not mad about that. Although Impractical Jokers came out in like 2011, so they had a couple years where I don't even know what they were showing on True TV. I tuned out. But back to Adult Swim here. Our lineup is as such. At 10 p.m., we have American Dad with the episode Tearjerker. This being new to Adult Swim, this episode at least. But the episode had premiered probably on Fox previously. But I think American Dad might be showing up for the first time in our lineup here. I know we've talked about it on the podcast before, so I can't say for certain. But American Dad, it's Seth MacFarlane, a.k.a. Wayne the Main Brain McClane.
Yes! Oh, God, yes!
It's Seth MacFarlane's other show after Family Guy. And it's kind of similar to Family Guy a little bit, but also different. It's got its own vibe to it, its own sense of humor to it. I know there's a lot of people that prefer American Dad to Family Guy. It's less reliant on just like pop culture references. And as far as I know, American Dad's still on TV to this day. They're still making new episodes, just like Family Guy. So American Dad, tearjerker at 10 p.m. 10:30 p.m., we have Family Guy with Brian in Love. And then after that, 11 p.m., Family Guy again with Peter's daughter. And I believe Peter's daughter's name is Meg, right? Yeah, shut up, Meg. That's my Peter Griffin impression. How about that? These 2 episodes airing, but the interesting thing is that Brian in Love is an old episode from 2000, and then Peter's Daughter is a newer episode from like within this year. Now it's making its Adult Swim debut, but again, same thing. It's aired on Fox already. So 2 episodes there, Family Guy back to back. 11:30 p.m. we get Robot Chicken with Yancey the Yo-Yo Boy. This not a new episode, but this episode does have a Beetlejuice segment, and a little off topic here, but Beetlejuice in 2024 is getting a new movie, finally. Really excited for it. I'm going to say Beetlejuice 3 times in the mirror, then I'm going to go see it with a big old smile on my face. Looking forward to that. 11:45 p.m. we got Aqua Teen Hunger Force with this episode, Robots Everywhere, and again, this being new to Adult Swim, but as we discussed, it's not actually new, because you could have seen this at the end of last year on the Zombie Ninja Pro-Am game. After that, we're going over to Squidbillies with new episode Web Next. This is at midnight, this being a new episode as well, and I think this being our first actual new episode of the night that you couldn't have seen elsewhere, and this is the first episode of Season 3 of Squidbillies, so both Squidbillies and Aqua Teen starting off on a new season tonight. 12:15 a.m. we get Tim and Eric, awesome show, great job with the episode Pepperoni, also a new episode. This one's got the song I'm Never Ever Ever Gonna Wipe My Butt. Just a pure banger, okay? Certified hood classic by Tim and Eric. We also have Fred Armisen in this episode, which, spoilers, Fred is showing up in the Aqua Teen episode too. So Fred in 2 episodes at least this night on Adult Swim. Fred Armisen being the Dancing is Forbidden crowned king of January 20th, 2008. He is the Adult Swim king tonight. 12:30 a.m. we get the Venture Bros with Are You There, God? It's Me, Dean. Not a new episode. 1 a.m. we get a show I have never heard of before. It is Garth Marenghi's Dark Place with the episode Skipper the Eye Child. So looking into this show, it is a British 2004 horror comedy. So, of course, these episodes not new, and this Adult Swim just licensing other stuff to show. And this television show is live action, like Tim and Eric is. So this, again, showing where Adult Swim is going at this point in time. We're getting more live action shows on Adult Swim. They're not sticking just to cartoons, because, they're on Cartoon Network, but it is its own networking block with a completely different audience. Anyways, it's possible I saw this at some point at night, but I don't recognize this. I'll have to check it out. I'm sure it's good. I don't know the names of the people who worked on it. Like, I don't recognize them by name, but I know what they look like. I've seen them in other British stuff, so it's probably a good time. It looks like Adult Swim started showing this in 2007, then it showed it pretty consistently up till 2011. The show is only 6 episodes long. Like, that's how a lot of British shows are. They're usually pretty short. So they might show this, like, twice through over the course of a year. And again, it's only 6 episodes once through. So it would be about 12 weeks throughout the year they would show this from 2007 till 2011. And maybe they showed it after that. I'm not going to look too much into it since it's not an Adult Swim original. But after Dark Place here, the Adult Swim block repeats. It goes through all the shows I just told you about, and then at 5 a.m., we get our beloved Home Movies with the episode Mortgages and Marbles. This, of course, not being new. Home Movies is done at this point. They're just showing a Home Movies episode at 5 a.m., because why not? What the hell are you going to do about it? I'm sure you'd be happy to see it at 5 a.m. I know I would be. So that is our lineup this night. American Dad, 2 Family Guys, Robot Chicken, Aqua Teen, Squidbillies, Tim and Eric, The Venture Bros, Dark Place, and Home Movies. I think it's a pretty solid lineup. But is this episode of Aqua Teen pretty solid? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Let's go talk about Robots Everywhere.
Check it out, y'all, check it out.
You know how at the beginning of this episode I told you I was on a little break for a while between seasons here? Just a little break. Well, let me tell you, I could have done that break for another 3 fucking years, all right? That was a nice ass break. Which, speaking of which, I forgot to say, when this episode comes up, this Robots Everywhere coverage, that will be about 3 years after our Rabot coverage first went up. So, hey, happy birthday to Dancing is Forbidden, the podcast. It's a lot of fun doing it. I love doing this podcast, but I also like being on a break. And you know who brought me back from that break? The Moonmasters over at patreon.com/dancingisforbidden, letting me know with their hard-earned cash that they like this podcast. They want it to go on. They want to help out with it. I left to go to the store to get some milk. I could have stayed left, but goddamn it, just thinking about those sweet little patrons, I had to come back with the milk. I'm back with the Aqua Teen episode, and you know what? I'm coming back with a shout-out for a very special supporter signing up back in November. Jesus Christ, I'm so behind on shout-outs. We'll get caught up this year, I promise. Signing up back in November of 2023, we had Thorin the Grumpy Dwarf. Thorin signing on at the number 1 in the Hood G tier. As you'll know, Thorin gets shouted out at the end of these episodes. And Thorin letting me know that they are listening to each new episode as the episode drops, as soon as Thorin can, while working in the lab. Now, Thorin didn't expound upon this, what the lab is, so I'm going to assume Thorin is making highly illegal narcotics deep in the Colombian jungle somewhere. So that's pretty badass. I'm glad I can assist with that. Thorin tells us, I watched a few episodes growing up, but recently watched through the whole series after buying the Baffler Meal box set. As a teenager, I loved classic episodes like MCP Pants, Total Recall, and of course, the original Cybernetic Ghost of Christmas Past episode. As an adult, I really loved Rubberman, Harry Bus, and my favorite episode, for some deranged reason. Thorin, you're trying to steal my heart with this list of episodes. Those are some of my absolute favorites. I think the Harry Bus gets some hate, but I've seen that one. I like it. I think Doug Stanhope is in that episode. I'm excited to cover that one. Thorin, thank you so much for your support. I hope, if anything, that this podcast only makes you grumpier, because that's awesome.
Coming up next, Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Robots Everywhere making its Adult Swim debut on January 20th, 2008. I'm not going to get into episode ratings anymore simply because they're hard to verify, and also they can change over time, so it's just kind of a mess. I'm just going to ignore those going forward. But of course, I want to say, we followed Aqua Teen that started off as a show that was rated TV PG through TV MA. And I think that is interesting, and we've documented that. But going forward now, it's just going to be TV 14 and TV MA. So if the episode is very raunchy, just assume it's MA. But again, it's hard to verify these things, so I'm not going to be pointing them out going forward. And especially, like I just said, it's not going to change a whole lot between episodes anymore, so to me, a little less interesting to talk about. But what is interesting to talk about is our cast on this one, and we're starting off with a pretty big cast, a mix of known names and unknown names on this one. So first up, we have our usual suspects, Dana Snyder as Master Shake, and Carrie Means as Frylock. We do have Dave Willis here, but notably there's no Meatwad in this episode, so I think this is our very first episode without Meatwad in it, and without one of the main Aqua Teens. But we do have Dave Willis, of course, like I said, playing Carl in this episode. We have Matt Maiellaro playing a new character, a character named Markula, who is the Aqua Teens landlord. We'll see him popping up in this one. We have two big names here. We have Fred Armisen and Rachel Dratch as the robot parents. And then as the children, we have Sam Harrigan and Molly Harrigan, who are the children of Matt Harrigan, who is an Adult Swim producer, but we heard him as Major Shake in Season 1, Episode 11's Bad Replicant. And then we have Dave Willis's kids, Max and Sadie. I think this is our first time hearing Sadie on the show, although I'm pretty sure we heard Max back in Season 3, Episode 12's Hypnogerm. as a crying baby, basically. And also Fred Armisen was previously in Hypnogerm. So both of those guys coming back from Hypnogerm for this one. And then that's not it. We have two more names on this. We have Vishal and Divya Roni. Vishal being a producer on Aqua Teen. We've heard him in previous Aqua Teen episodes, but he's a producer on the show as well. And his wife, Divya, playing themselves in this one. We'll see them at the beginning of the episode. They are looking at the Aqua Teen's house. So that's our cast on this one, a pretty stacked cast. And of course, I'll get more into these people as they show up in the episode. Last but not least, our editors on this one, we have John Breston and J. Wade Edwards. John Breston, actually, I mean, he's a longtime Aqua Teen guy. He's been on since the first season, but we haven't seen him edit on an episode really since season 3. Now, he is credited on season 4, episode 3's deleted scenes, but that's only because it shows unused movie film for theaters clips, which he worked on that film. Otherwise, he was absent from season 4, and we're seeing him back here in season 5. Glad to see him back on board. So jumping into this episode, what are we seeing? Well, first of all, the thing that we're going to see, Aqua Teen is in HD now. It's full screen. It's 16:9. It's no longer 4:3. And that is in thanks to, I just mentioned it, movie film for theaters, because they had all these HD assets now from the film. So they're like, shit, let's just make the show in HD too. Not only that, but we have access to the show now in 1080p. It's like very high quality compared to the 480p of all the previous episodes. So we have a much better visual fidelity here. So I'm excited because we will be able to make out a lot more details from this point on. But also worth mentioning is the show does lose a little bit of charm. You know, when it's this high quality, we're used to it looking a little fuzzy, you know, a little old school, and that's not the case anymore. And in fact, when you watch it in 1080p, you can see like these jagged edges along the characters and stuff that was hidden before. So in a way, making the show higher fidelity makes it look worse in some aspects. But overall, I'm not complaining because, again, I'm excited to be able to make out little details, particularly that our friend Bob Pettit put into the show that a lot of the times would get just too blurred out in the previous seasons to really be able to appreciate. So, with that out of the way, it's robots everywhere. Of course, there's no cold opening. So after the intro, which the intro is the same intro as previous seasons, but they stretched it from 4:3 to 16:9, so the intro looks a little wonky. It's a little bit wider, and they didn't upscale the intro like the show proper is. So the intro is kind of like just stretched out looking, while the actual show itself looks very good. Jumping in here, our establishing shot is an exterior shot of the Aqua Teens house, and right off the bat, we hear Carl. He's talking, and what he's doing is he is showing the Aqua Teens house to a couple, and this is Vishal and his wife, Divya. But I want to talk about the sign really quickly that's outside the Aqua Teens house. It says, "For sale by the owner," but slapped over that, it says "reduced." It says, "Immaculate 2-bedroom, open house today." Underneath is a name, and it's intentionally going to be hard to pronounce. The first name is Casey. The last name is Tangier Lennington or something. It's a very long last name. I don't think this is really a last name. But then it says, "Call 555-0113 extension 12. So we see the sign outside. The house is for sale. Again, Carl's showing the house. We go inside the house, and we see, first of all, there's like a long pipe that we learn is just expelling gas into the house the entire time, a natural gas, so you shouldn't be in there. It's very unsafe. And the kitchen looks to be a bit destroyed, like something happened in the kitchen. Also in this clip, we're going to cut back to outside where we will see the tree wizard, aka the homeless man that we first saw back in season 2, episode 14's Spirit Journey Formation anniversary. We're going to see the tree wizard standing outside, and then Carl's going to blow him away with the black shotgun that we talked about back in season 4, episode 12's Ezekiel. He's going to blow the homeless man away while he's talking to Vishal and his wife. This, of course, blowing out the window. Like, he breaks the window to do this, which is funny when you're trying to sell the house. Let's see how good of a salesman Carl is.
So very roomy over here, you know, you got the vaulted, well, it's not vaulted ceiling, but you could do that if you wanted to. You know, put your flat screen TV there if you can afford one of them. You know, I can, so, you know, don't judge me. But bars on the windows, because, you know, we get so much homeless traffic through here that they'll see that plasma screen and they'll break down the wall like a bunch of zombies.
I like Carl says there's bars over the windows to protect the house, but there clearly isn't. Like, we can see there's not. But, I mean, obviously he's lying about a lot of stuff. Like, he says, well, there's no vaulted ceiling, but you could put one in if you wanted. Which you can't. You'd have to, like, rebuild the house to put in a bigger ceiling, essentially. Or I guess you could knock out the attic, but we'll get to that in a minute here. One thing I want to say is, first of all, funny that Carl's, like, bragging, like, oh, well, I can afford a nice TV. But the bigger thing I want to say is I appreciate seeing the tree wizard here, the homeless man. Now, obviously, they just use him as a gimmick because Carl's talking about how bad the house is, kind of like there's homeless traffic coming through all the time. But I like that we see the tree wizard here because if you'll recall, the first time we saw him back in Spirit Journey Formation Anniversary, Shake was doing the same thing Carl is. Shake was trying to sell the house to pay off the song he made, and the tree wizard was the person who responded to the ad for the house. So Shake was trying to sell him the house. So I like that we see him here when Carl's trying to sell the Aqua Teens house. Just a fun callback that I don't know if it was intended. I have no clue, but it's fun to see him nonetheless. Let's continue on here, see how Carl does with this pitch. Two visual elements right off the bat. We're going to look up at the door to the attic, which there's blood around it, and there's some blood dripping off of that. So a fun reference there to Willie Nelson living up in the attic. And then we also get a throwback to a running Aqua Teen joke of them not having a bathroom, and we will see the floor. There is a hole in the floor, and there is some old pizza kind of just thrown there to mask the smell.
And don't never go into the attic. I just nailed that door shut. You don't want to see what's up there. Hey, you got kids? If I'm married to her. We've been bumping them out.
We got 2 monkeys.
Yeah, that might be a problem here. See, they ain't got no bathroom here, but they got a hole in the plywood that goes all the way down to the crawl space, and there's plenty of room down there. They got this old pizza there to block off the aroma. Your wife's pretty hot, man. How much do you make a year?
You have some manners. Who lived here before?
Just some residents, you know. I'm not talking about them.
We get a little bit of, like, acknowledgement here that the Aqua Teens aren't around because us as the viewer is like, well, where are the Aqua Teens? What's happening with them? Why is Carl selling their house? So they are bringing it up here, kind of planting the seeds for that. I want to go back to the beginning of the clip here where we look up at the entryway to the attic. It's kind of funny because they are having continuity here by implying something evil lives in the attic. You don't want to go up there. But of course, in Season 2, Episode 15's The Shaving, at the end of the episode, Carl gets his arms ripped off and, like, dies in that one. So it is funny that they have some continuity and, like, yeah, that creature's up there, but they're obviously glossing over the fact that Carl should be dead here if we are trying to have continuity. But hey, it's Aqua Teen. They do whatever the hell they want. Also, to the fact the Aqua Teens don't have a bathroom, of course, I have to be pedantic as hell and mention every single time that in Season 2, Episode 4's Supercomputer, we did see Meatwad in a bathroom taking a shower at some point next to Frylock's room. But yeah, obviously Aqua Teen all over the place with what's going on. They say that the waste drops right into the crawl space. Interestingly, whenever we go into the crawl space, as far as I know certainly up till this point, we don't ever see, like, any waste or anything down there. I guess there is the nuclear waste. That's for another time. But I do want to mention that Carl picks up one of the pieces of pizza that's there to mask the smell, which is gross. You would think there'd be, like, shit and piss on that pizza, but whatever. He quickly drops it. Then he says some maybe not professional things about Vishal's wife there. Then, of course, we hear Vishal speaking. And we've heard Vishal, I believe, 3 other times on the show. Season 1, Episode 16's PDA as the insurance agent. Season 2, Episode 13's Revenge of the Trees as one of the trees, and then Season 3, Episode 3's Remooned as the clerk at the convenience store where they try and cash that check. So we've heard Vishal on Aqua Teen before, and again, he's involved in like every episode as a line producer. After that, we cut to Frylock's room, which is the de facto master bedroom, especially considering, you know, the closet's not full of sand, the carpet isn't burned, the walls aren't drawn on. It's a more presentable bedroom option here. He's showing them Frylock's room, and we see on the ground there's an X made out of electrical tape, and then there are 9 holes just poked through the wall or busted through the wall, whatever. And Carl tells Divya here that she needs to change on the X, like when she's changing clothes, and then we get this amazing visual reveal where we see one of Carl's windows directly through one of the holes. So the joke being, hey, you have to change here, and then Carl will be able to see her from his house.
And over here, my dear, you can undress right here on this X. You know, don't, you know, gotta be on that spot. And, you know, you gotta do it there. So when can we plan on you moving in?
Look, we really need to discuss this.
No, I understand. Take your time. Take your time. I need an answer in the next 5 minutes, but take your time.
Take your time. I need an answer in the next 5 minutes, but please take your time. Just such a depraved moment from Carl. It's so stupid. Yeah, you have to change here. Like, in what world would this work? It's so fucking funny. I don't know how they think of this shit. I do want to say, though, to the fact, like, we get this reveal where we see one of the holes and we see Carl's window through this hole. It's clearly the front of his house. And if you think about the wall that we're looking at, it's on the side of the Aqua Teens house. Well, that should link up with the other side of Carl's house, right? Because their houses are side by side. They're not like across the street from each other or something. So yeah, it's funny because we're seeing the front of Carl's house through Frylock's side window. It doesn't make any sense, but I don't know that they've ever shown like a side profile of Carl's house at this point. They have for the Aqua Teens house, but I don't think we've seen just a side shot of Carl's house. So they just used what they had. It doesn't make any sense once you actually look at it and think about it, but a very, very, very funny joke nonetheless. Vishal and Divya, they're going to think about it here. You would expect, hey, this guy wants to see you change. There's no bathroom. There's a gas leak. There's a homeless problem. This guy just blew the fucking window out. You'd expect them to say no, but it's Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
I don't really feel safe here. I think it's perfect.
You think it's perfect? I think it's perfect-er. Check out that hole in the floor.
It's so old world. Did you know pooping standing up is chic?
Get a hold of yourself. We're ready to make an offer.
It smells like hot garbage pizza.
Let's just pay the asking price. Cash.
That is really smart.
That is not really smart. So a fun twist there where Divya's like, I don't really feel comfortable here. It's perfect. Like, they're just kind of making fun of hipsters here where they just want to move into what is supposed to be a bad neighborhood. Now, we've discussed before, like, the Aqua Teens neighborhood ultimately isn't that bad. It's really just the Aqua Teens house and what goes on at the house and because of the house. But yeah, the idea here is it's not a safe place, but they have these hipsters who are going to come in and you would assume gentrify it, and they're dumb as hell because like let's just pay asking price in cash. Like, yeah, they don't even want to like try and haggle this down. So Carl's going to come over and they're going to express how much they love this house. They're ready to buy it until a laser beam comes and kills Vishal and Divya and melts them into the ground. And then coming up behind them are going to be 2 robots. These robots visually are very simplistic looking. They're basically giant squares with little wheels for feet. They have some little tray in the front. The man robot is yellow, and their arms are the same too. They have like these like little pinchers on the top of their box, and they also have a head. The yellow guy here, voiced by Fred Armisen, his head kind of looks like Bart Simpson. It's like he's yellow and he's got like the spiky head. And then the woman robot, voiced by Rachel Dratch, she is like a lavender color. She's also has like a bra stretched over her, although she doesn't have any breasts or anything. There's just randomly a bra on her. And She has like a smaller head, but then she has hair, kind of like Marge Simpson, but her hair is orange, and she has a blue bow on it. These two characters are going to kill Vishal and Divya, and then they're going to roll up and talk about how much they like the house.
Carl, we love this house.
We love the house. We keep passing the sign from Quadrant 9.
This is perfect. It suits our every need, want, and desire. How much is the house? Please say a very low number.
So, a very quick turn here. Like, we just had the funny misdirect of this house sucks, but these characters liked it. Well, they instantly got killed, and now we have these crazy characters that you would expect from an episode of Aqua Teen. I do want to shout out the animation of Vishal and Divya getting killed looks really good. Really pay attention to that if you watch this episode. They spend a lot of time on that, it looks like. And then to see we have like that nice animation of them dying, but also like their characters look real, like they're human beings, to get replaced by these just really primitive looking robots is so funny. So to our new voices here, of course, we have Fred Armisen, who I mentioned is in Hypnogerm, and he was also in Aqua Teen Hunger Force: movie film for theaters. So Fred, no stranger to the Aqua Teen universe at this point, so I'm not going to get too into him, other than to reiterate, I love Fred Armisen. I think he's hilarious. He's great in everything he's in. Otherwise, we have a newcomer here. We have Rachel Dratch. So Rachel, you may have seen in this little show called Saturday Night Live. She was a cast member from 1999 to 2006. This actually looks to be her Adult Swim debut, and then after this, she'll go on to be in Squidbillies, Assy McGee, and Super Jail. I'm seeing Delocated, great show. It's Rachel Dratch. She's in like so much stuff. She's in like 1,000 things. I guess here's a connection for you. We had a Willie Nelson reference earlier, voiced by Tom Sharpling. Well, Rachel Dratch was in an episode of Monk, which Tom Sharpling wrote on that show. So how about that? Excited to get Rachel in here. Although, let's just talk about this now, okay? This is a bit of a tangent-ish, maybe. In this episode, Fred Armisen and Rachel Dratch are credited by name. Any other show, it's like, well, yeah, so what? But of course, this is Aqua Teen, right? Lots of times actors have to go by fake names because Aqua Teen is not a union show at this point. And even with Fred Armisen, for example, back in season 3, he went under the name Stuart Bryhut in Hypnogerm. But here, he's credited as Fred Armisen. So I asked Dave Willis, I'm like, was Aqua Teen union at this point in season 5?
No. We were only union for like the movie and the last season, I think.
Oh, okay. Because I noticed that, like, for example, in the first episode, Robots Everywhere, Fred Armisen is credited by name, while in the Hypnogerm episode, he was credited under a fake name, so I wasn't sure if...
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, if I had it to do over again, I mean, I had no control over it, but I would have loved for our whole thing to be union. I would be zooming you from a larger room right now from a new computer.
Yeah.
And I hate to, we would get people to work with us, and then, the sort of non-union thing would come up, and so we never really handled that, but sometimes people would do it under a pseudonym, but it kind of became a cool thing. Hey, just sort of do it under a nom de plume.
So that's what Dave had to say, and yeah, I feel like we're not any closer to knowing why Fred Armisen can be credited here when he couldn't before. Maybe he wasn't SAG at this point? I don't know. All I can do is tell you that the show isn't union at this point, and he is able to be credited by name somehow, but he wasn't before. I can't explain what's going on. And in case you're unfamiliar, we've talked about this on the podcast before, but the reason the show was not union was because it was much cheaper to produce that way. And it's because of this that, for example, Carrie Means, Dana Snyder, even Dave Willis, they don't get any residuals from this first original run, so that sucks. But if it wasn't for that, they probably wouldn't have been able to make Aqua Teen because it would have just cost too much. Adult Swim wouldn't have wanted to have to pay for that. So, hey, I mean, it's bittersweet. Like, it sucks that it wasn't union. They would have definitely all made more money if it was, but if it was union, then the show probably would have gotten canceled after like a season or something like that. Or if they were ever even able to make it to begin with. So, jumping back into robots everywhere here, Vishal and Divya, they're dead even though they wanted to buy this house. They're replaced by 2 robots. And if there's one thing you know about robots, I don't have to tell you this because you already knew this, but robots have lots of kids. The dad robot, he's going to call in the children, and the place is going to be like swarmed by robots that look the exact same basically as them, but much smaller.
Hey kids, check it out, pizza. Hey, there's pizza in here. I'm not saying it twice. All of you, now.
Pizza! 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 Pizza!
Yes, pizza. Blocking the aroma chamber.
Unleash the mighty odor!
Your instinct is our
Hang
food.
on a second. We got a very high selling price on this, so, I don't know that you can afford it.
Yeah, we have nothing. All right, and you're gonna like it.
Well, like this, it ain't got no bathroom.
We have no need for bathrooms. The universe is our bathroom.
The universe is my bathroom.
We deposit oil into the atmosphere when we get nervous. Standard robot protocol.
These robots, they expel oil into the atmosphere when they're nervous. They must be very nervous right now because not only is the place swarmed by all these kids, and these kids are clumsy, like one falls into the hole that is used as the bathroom, one slams into the dad. Well, they all start like squirting oil everywhere. The house is already getting ruined, and that's going to continue throughout this episode in classic Aqua Teen fashion. But yeah, there's just oil all over the walls now. Those kids voiced by, like I said earlier, the children of Matt Harrigan and Dave Willis. I don't know who's voicing who, and I asked Dave, do you remember having your kids on this episode? And he didn't really remember, so I don't have anything to tell you about that. But I'm sure it was fun. The kids sound like they're having a blast, and it's a great touch to this episode. I love having these authentic little kid voices, just like, yay, as like all this craziness is going on. It's just such a nice little touch. So let's jump back in, and at this point, Carl is trying to dissuade them from wanting to buy this house and live here, because, understandably, he's annoyed by these creatures. They're worse than the Aqua Teens, really. So he's trying to convince them not to want to live here, but it's not going to work. We're going to see, there's like a lot of visual things here where like, we're going to see 2 of the kids. One kid is just bashing into the other one, which I guess is them mating, which I'm not going to touch those implications. But the one that's getting rammed into is kind of like spitting out little smaller robots. They're like microscopic. They're so tiny. So they're breeding with each other here. We're going to go to the living room because this is all taking place in the hallway still. But then we go to the living room where Carl's going to point out that gas leak that we saw earlier. They're going to explain it. And then that's going to turn on the mother and father robots. Nothing Carl's doing is working.
Well, look, rooms are pretty tight, you got all them screaming robots to keep, are they multiplying over there?
Hey, you don't worry about us. We have no need for space.
All right, well, gas. That's right. Gas leaking in the house.
Gas is our favorite flavor.
Yeah, that works for us. Yeah, gas is an aphrodisiac for us.
It turns us on sexually.
Yay, gas!
Yeah, this is a match. This works for us.
Well, 2 people were murdered here.
Yeah, we killed them.
Well, yeah, they might try to haunt your house, you don't know that.
Nonsense! Everything's perfect. We live here now.
So there's way more oil spraying going on too. Of course, that's a very visual thing. I love Carl tries to scare them, like 2 people were murdered here, and it's just, yeah, we murdered them. And the mom robot pulls out a skull when she says that. Worth mentioning, when we saw Vishal and Divya get killed, there was no skull, like they just got melted. But knowing these robots are crazy, it could be anybody else's skull, who knows. But I love the parallel between Divya and Vishal and then these robots, where in both cases, nobody should want to live here, but they both were into it, but these characters are very different from each other. So it's kind of fun that at first it was working in Carl's favor, but now that he doesn't want people to take up the offer, robots to take up the offer, they still want the place regardless. So it's a fun kind of twisting and turning of just the absolute dumbassery that anybody would want to live in this place. I want to shout out a moment where the mom and dad mate, after they talk about how the gas is an aphrodisiac, and then instantly out of the dad's mouth, a little baby pops out, and then it goes, "Yay, gas!"
Yay, gas!
I think one time when I don't even know if I was born yet, but my mom told me this story once about how my uncle came over and was like, "It smells like gas in here." There was a gas leak in the fucking house, but like my parents didn't know because you just kind of got used to it, I guess. So crisis averted, I guess. I don't know if it was an aphrodisiac for my parents. Maybe that's how I got conceived. Maybe it was because of that gas. I don't know. But again, fun to hear Carl trying to scare them out of, oh, people got killed here. Doing this podcast dredges up lots of fucked up memories from my life that I've forgotten. If you're a patron, I got into one of those that I really forgot about in our The Room coverage about getting wiretapped. But to this, I'm reminded of when I was growing up. I want to say I was probably 13. It was probably around the time of this Aqua Teen episode. The house next door to us, which our landlord, he owned that house as well. It was empty for a period. Nobody lived there. And they had a basketball hoop like attached to the garage. So my sister and I would go over there sometimes and play basketball. And I remember we did it that summer. Well, in our town, there was a murder. Some elderly woman got murdered. And turns out the guy who murdered her was staying in the empty house right next to my house. And we were playing like in that driveway when the guy was there, it turns out. Like we never saw him or anything. We only found out after the fact, after like police were there investigating and stuff. And to be clear, like he didn't kill anybody in that house next door to us. He just was hiding out there because it was empty. But I don't know why, like this reminded me of that like, yeah, there was like a murderer living next door at some point. Yeah. And then eventually we moved into that house too. So, hey. And these houses sucked, right? They were similar to the Aqua Teens house, which is probably why I related to the show so much. But we were not like Divya and Vishal and these robots. We were not ecstatic about moving into them, but we had no other options. So jumping back into the episode here, they're going to ask who Carl is, right? Who is this guy showing us this house? Is he the owner? We'll find out.
Who are you?
Well, I'm the realtor, and I gotta say, I'm putting my foot down. I need proof of, you got a job, man.
I have no credit, no savings, and I'm between opportunities.
But I must warn you, he is lazy.
Extremely lazy.
Then I think we're gonna have us a little problem. Okay, I gotta go.
Lots of great stuff here. Lots of visual moments. For example, when Carl says, "I'm putting my foot down," he steps on one of the really tiny robots and squishes it. And I love it because nobody reacts to it. The parents aren't like, "Our child." Like, they don't give a shit that this thing just got squished or crushed to death. We also have at the beginning of the clip, one of the robots just squirts oil all over Carl. He doesn't really react to it, of course. 5 seasons into Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Carl is used to getting just abused by his neighbors. Lots of fun stuff there regarding the robots having jobs. Like the wife says that the husband is very lazy. He's like, "I'm between opportunities right now." It's such a vapid, like optimist speak way to describe that. Like it's fine. You can say, "I don't have a job." Like that's fine. But it's like, "I'm between opportunities." Although I guess it's not fine when you're trying to buy a house. But I love how straightforward they are. They're like, "We don't have anything, and you will like that," or whatever they said earlier. It's so funny. But the episode is going to change up a little bit here. We're going to meet a new character, and there was some lead up to this. Like in that last clip, we cut to outside the Aqua Teen's house, and we saw an ominous shadow up against the wall. And of course, at the end of the clip, you heard some stuff break, and what happened was the lights went out. So now in our next clip, this really old-looking guy, he kind of looks like Tony Iommi, his hair at least. He's going to fly in here because he's kind of like a bat, but also like a man. You might say he's like Man-Bat, or whatever that superhero's name is. I don't know, something like that. He's going to fly in as a bat, but then he's going to morph into just like a very old, hunchbacked-looking creature, like a Dracula kind of creature. Well, it's Markula. This, it turns out, is the Aqua Teens landlord, and it's been mentioned before in previous episodes, like Spirit Journey Formation Anniversary, that they rent the house. Well, now 8 years after Aqua Teen is on the air or whatever, we're going to see their landlord. So I love that they're introducing this character. And Markula, voiced by Matt Maiellaro, unlike a lot of other characters we meet in Aqua Teen, we're going to continue to see him going forward with the show and even into like Aqua Teen Forever Plantasm. We're going to meet him there. He's a permanent character that will stay in the show. He's going to come in here and see what the heck Carl's up to.
Carl.
Oh, hey, Marcus.
Markula. Stop trying to sell my house.
Look, hey, no, I just showing this group of machines all the features.
Did you show them the gas leak?
Yeah, no, I pointed that out first, and they're all over it.
And I love robots. Sold to this group of machines.
I need this
All right, I'm going to cut in here really quickly. We're going to get a bunch of visual stuff. Basically, they're just destroying the house.
door taken down. Floor, don't need it. Move this along, this wall, down, not again. This sleeve, I like this. Move this over an inch. No, move, just gone.
So this is just insane. I want to address the visual stuff first because this is maybe the least important, is that the robots start... well, first of all, Carl's like, I'm selling the house to these robots, and they're humping each other and squirting oil everywhere. Markula's all for it, so they just start destroying everything. They shoot lasers out of their eyes. They blow up the door. They blow holes in Frylock's bedroom wall. We get this little joke of the dad's like, "Oh, I like this." They're looking at Frylock's computer, but then the kids just blast holes in it, and he's like fine with it. And then the last bit there was they're looking at the Aqua Teens TV. He's like, "Oh, move it over an inch." They shoot one little laser out. He's like, no, gone. And then they just destroy that too. So a very fun visual scene. Let's talk about Markula, this new character that we have now. Again, it's not common in Aqua Teen where we're going to get a character that sticks around. Now, of course, January 20th, 2008, you don't know that this character is ever going to come back. You would actually assume that he wouldn't, like most other Aqua Teen characters. But, we know now that's not the case. So I had to ask Matt Maiellaro, who voices Markula, what went into creating that character, and if he could tell us anything about the creation of Markula.
Markula. I think I was just doing that dumb voice, and it was just sort of the humpy old grandfather vampire. And we had done a short called Grandpire, and he was just a funny character to us.
Well, I should say Grandpire becoming assisted living Dracula.
Exactly, assisted living Dracula. Yeah, so it started out as Grandpire, became that. And then Markula, I'm sure, spawned from that. So sometimes in the room, one of us will just do some dumb voice and we'll just write a character around it, But the fact that it was sort of this old hunchback Dracula who was kind of scary, more into himself, a little pompous and arrogant, not really a Dracula.
But also a slumlord.
And a slumlord. Like, as if Dracula's going to, own condos and rent them out. So...
Right. I do want to mention that in the 2004 season, in the Little Brittle episode, we do see Dracula in that episode, and you do his voice there.
Right.
So I'm just realizing this now, that it's not really that big of a stretch to have you play Dracula in one episode, or at least a vampire, and then play Markula in another episode.
He's really funny in the movie too. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I do him, but just because of the stupid dance he does and everything, it's so funny.
Yeah, lifts his thing up and kicks his legs around. So I take it the idea was for you to always be Markula, right? You didn't write this character with somebody else in mind.
No, no. I mean, that happens a lot. Like with the Moonanites, Dave and I just did them. Yeah, it was just me. And plus, back then we really couldn't afford a lot of cast members. So that's how 12 Ounce Mouse was only able to get done, is because we used mostly in-house people. So yeah, so that happens a lot. And I don't even do voices or impressions, like when I actually do Markula, I think I'm pitched down a little bit too. But I just have that sort of whatever stupid inflection that works for that character,
Right. I know that there was a former Apple CEO named Mike Markula. Was that where you guys got the name from, or is...
Where's that? What?
He's a former Apple CEO, like back in the 80s, maybe?
No,
Mike Markula.
No, I don't know what that is or who that is. No, I'm sure it just came out of Dracula. His name is Mark. It's Markula. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I was listening, because I saw it the other day that there was a former Apple CEO named that. So I was like, I wonder if that's where they got the name.
No, it wasn't at all. No.
Gotcha. Markula does look a little bit like Tony Iommi, though.
You're right. He does. No,
Is that a coincidence?
But you're right. I never thought about that till right now. But Markula has all his fingertips.
Yeah, he doesn't have a thimble or whatever the hell on one of them. Yeah.
That's funny. You're right. That makes sense. Yeah, I totally see it now. That's awesome.
All right, this is Ronnie coming back in. That is awesome. Thank you, Matt, for filling us in on the creation of Markula. I do want to say from here, I go in to talk more with Matt about just him voice acting in general. So I'm going to put that on the end of this podcast episode. So stick around for that because it's not entirely related to this episode of Aqua Teen, but it is very interesting to listen to. So check that out at the very end there. But Matt kind of telling us that this idea kind of spawned from Assisted Living Dracula, and the working title on that was Grampire. And if you're unfamiliar, that goes back to season 1, episode 3 of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Bus of the Undead, where Moth Monster Man is watching Assisted Living Dracula, of course, starring the late, great Don Kennedy as Assisted Living Dracula or Grampire, and Mary Kraft is in that as well. She's brilliant. So the idea kind of stemmed from that, and the fact that Matt voices Markula is really just of convenience because, he's already there to begin with, right? He's one of the creators of this show. He's working on every episode, but also financially convenient in that they don't have to keep bringing somebody else back on to do this character. The fact that Matt just does it, they can always bring Markula back in going forward, and it's really not a big deal because he's there, and I don't even know what else he gets paid to do that, if anything. I have no idea. So there's a little bit on Markula. Let me actually jump back to that previous clip, because even though we're in season 5 of Aqua Teen, right, they've had a theatrical release, they've had a video game, the show is full screen, 16:9, 1080p. That doesn't mean the show is without our beloved visual errors, because let me tell you, I spotted one here. At the very end of that last clip, Markula says, "sold to these machines." When he says that, look at the bottom of the screen. You'll see a weird blue line going through it. This, I think, because maybe they pulled too far back than they were really able to with that image. Then we also see what looks like the pincers of one of the robots. Before that, it goes off screen, we see it go to the bottom of the screen. Well, I think they literally moved that asset in their software when they were animating it and just left it there, because you could see its stationary claws. Everything else in the scene is moving, all the other robots are moving around, but you just see these pincers just off screen, just there, because they didn't hide the asset, I think. So I know this one's kind of obscure, it's in the weeds, but just look at the episode at that point when Markula says "sold to these machines." Look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see what I'm talking about. So the house is successfully sold to these machines who are completely destroying the house. Remember, this is Aqua Teen Hunger Force. We're going to go back to those characters a little bit. Markula's going to ask Carl about the Aqua Teens, and there's going to be kind of a funny twist here.
Carl, have you seen the deadbeats around? The food.
They left in the middle of the night.
Because I had demons drag them off into the night. I'm not going to fix a gas leak for them. Now, at this very moment, they are being cocooned by military spiders in a cave in the Mojave Desert. That's what I do to a-holes.
We find out where the Aqua Teens are and why they are missing. This gas leak that we've seen since the beginning of the episode, it caused the Aqua Teens to complain to Markula, right? They're like, "Can you fix this gas leak? There's literally a pipe pumping gas into the house the entire time." I'm surprised Carl can be here without passing out at this point. But regardless, the Aqua Teens complained about this. Markula said "F you," and he had them taken away in the night by demons to the Mojave Desert because he's not going to fix this problem. So that's what's happening here in these trilogies of episodes. We have this character, Markula, to thank for the Aqua Teens being missing. So I looked into it. It looks like if you drive It's about 37 hours straight from the Jersey Shore to the Mojave Desert. If you're unfamiliar, the Mojave Desert is basically in southeastern California, southwestern Nevada. It's around there. So that's 37 hours of driving, or 39 days of walking. Now, they went there via Demon, so I don't know. Google Maps doesn't show me that time frame, if you can believe that. So I don't know how long that took. Maybe they used some sort of demonic portal to get there instantly. But that's where the Aqua Teens are. They are somewhere near California. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of getting the hint here that this Markula fellow is not such a good landlord. I mean, especially given the fact that this house doesn't even have a bathroom, which I think in real life would be illegal to rent out. I'm not entirely sure there. But regardless, Markula seems like a bad guy. He's saying, look, I'm not going to fix this gas leak. I'm not going to do this. If you complain, I'm sending you to the Mojave Desert, or as it's heard here, the Mojave Desert. Markula seeming like a bad landlord, but he's very going to quickly turn that around because he's saying, I don't do that for those a-holes. But then he's going to turn to the robots that he just rented the house to.
But not to you. I would never do that to you. You are welcome to live here forever and ever. Now, feast.
Feast on what, man?
Invisible robot meat. Favorite.
Kids, invisible robot meat!
Yeah, robot meat. Robot meat.
All right, if you all need anything at all, do not come next door.
So what you heard there, that is... Well, first of all, okay, let me start at the beginning. Markula leaves, and he turns back into a bat and flies away. When he does that, it's a great animation, by the way. The lights turn off in the house, which is the same way that when he came into the house as a bat, the lights turned off too. It didn't really make sense, but it is a very nice touch. Very cool visually. Adds kind of a sinisterness to this character. But Markula flies away, yeah, and he's like, oh, enjoy. And then Carl's like, enjoy what? And then the robot's like, oh, invisible robot meat. So, of course, visually on the screen, there's nothing there. It's just the characters, like, freaking out over nothing. Very funny, very silly, very stupid. And then as Carl leaves there, he's like, yeah, don't come bother me. And he lights a lighter. It's one of those long ones. He lights it by the gas leak, walks away as the house is burning down. I have to say now, and sorry if this is just me being a dumbass, but I am a little confused here because the house was rented out to the Aqua Teens, right? Markula's a landlord. But here he's saying he sold it. There was the for sale sign out front. So I don't know. This is a little confusing here. Obviously, selling a house and renting it are not the same thing. I don't know why Markula would have had the Aqua Teens taken away then just to turn around and sell the house. He could have tried to just sell it to them or just sell it to somebody else and not have to deal with the gas leak. I don't entirely know, but it is a little bit confusing now that I sit and think about it a little bit. But again, worth saying, this is Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Ultimately, this doesn't matter, but I am getting a little caught up on this detail because it is a little contradictory. I tried calling Matt Maiellaro to hound him on this because I'm actually pissed off about it now, but he didn't pick up. So let's continue on here with our episode. Markula is out of the scene now. Carl, he lit the Aqua Teens' old house on fire and walked away. Surely his problems are solved, right? We're going to cut over to Carl's house now, specifically in his bedroom. Carl's sleeping, but he's about to be woken up by the robots.
Carl? Carl? Hey, Carl? Carl! We can't sleep.
Can you?
Get out of my friggin' house!
No, I want some water.
Yes, we all want water.
All right, fine. Get some in the bathroom and then get out of here.
Robots don't drink water. Use your brain. You failed test number 1.
What are you talking about, man?
You must pass, or else.
Or else what? Ah! My shoulder here!
Come on, kids. Chubby is grumpy.
Chubby's grumpy.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Do the other one. At least make it even. Ah! Get out of here!
Carl there is referring to his shoulder hair. The dad robot, played by Fred Armisen, shoots one laser out of his eyeball to singe the hair off of Carl's shoulder. Well, at the end of the clip there, Carl's like, well, at least burn off the other one, so I'm symmetrical here. But yes, this is kind of typical Aqua Teen. I'm drawn back to season 1, episode 18's Cybernetic Ghost of Christmas Past from the Future. That episode opens up with Carl sleeping on his bed and then being awoken by the cybernetic ghost. Here, he's sleeping on his bed again, getting woken up by these set of robots this time around. And the episode takes a bit of a turn here because the robots are like, oh, we want some water. Carl says, well, go get some. Like, why are you even waking me up for this? But then like, oh, we don't drink water. You failed the first test. So the episode is going to change now to the robots putting Carl through these kinds of tests. Up until this point, you know, Carl was trying to sell the house. We had that bit with Markula, right? This was all at the Aqua Teens house. And we had Carl dealing with Vishal and Divya and then these robots. Well, now it's going to twist to the robots being more antagonistic towards Carl and more just specifically annoying to him and a little bit threatening to him too. Which obviously is classic Aqua Teen Hunger Force territory. So here, instead of the Aqua Teens getting Carl caught up in something, it's like the same thing is happening just without the Aqua Teens now. We just have this separate group of characters bugging Carl. Carl's going to realize he's in a bad spot here, so he's going to call his mom and ask to stay with her, basically. And throughout this entire clip, the robots are outside trying to get Carl's attention until eventually, well, they just break into his house. Why not?
Hey, Ma! It's Carl! How are you doing? Ma, I think about packing my bags and planning a trip to that really, dark, dismal VA hospital you live at. Oh, no. I'll bring a cot. I won't lay in bed with you.
Carl, hang on.
I just need a change of scenery, you know, and I love to see my favorite woman.
Say bye.
Hang up, Carl!
What do you mean tomorrow's physical therapy? It's Carl, your son. Yeah, the one with the mustache. Oh, is that right? Then you too, you bitch!
Carl, I've been calling you.
So that is the robots literally just busting through the walls of Carl's house to get inside. They're so desperate to get his attention. I love this aspect of Aqua Teen when it's like this army of robots. They all just want Carl's attention, and it's like, why? Why Carl out of anybody? It's so funny to me. But we have Carl talking on the phone to his mother, and I love that they use that generic just soundbite of a man on the phone. It's like, rah, 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 rah. Like he sounds like an angry guy, and that's supposed to be Carl's mom. I love that little just use of that as a joke there. We will go on to see Carl's mom in future episodes towards like later seasons of the show. But we got to hear her on the phone here. Worth mentioning, though, we've heard that soundbite, that just kind of man on phone sound in previous Aqua Teen episodes, and it's not unique to Aqua Teen. It's just like a production soundbite that I'm sure other shows use as well. But here, to use it for a woman, obviously, pretty funny. We learn that she lives in a VA hospital. That's where Carl wants to go stay with her. VA meaning Veterans Affairs, and this is supposed to be like for ex-military members. It's a public program for them to use these kinds of facilities. I don't know if that means that Carl's mom served in the military. Certainly possible, of course. Maybe that's where she was back in the Cybernetic Ghost episode. If you'll remember, Carl gets woken up and he gets a flashback of Christmas time when he was a kid, and it's just his dad. Maybe that's where his mom was. Maybe his mom was off in a war somewhere. I mean, in the Cybernetic Ghost episode, it's just Carl and his dad. It's supposed to be 1968. That would mean his mom was off serving in the Vietnam War. I guess that's the war that she served in to qualify her to live at the VA hospital here. That would mean that my grandfather and Carl's mother served in the same war. How about that, huh? How about link my life to Aqua Teen, except my grandfather died in 1965 in that war to some good old-fashioned friendly fire. USA! Hey, thank God for that war. It's a good thing we were over there, right? Well, you know who's not over there? Carl's not going over to the VA hospital to stay with his mom. She didn't even remember who he was, seemingly. She wants nothing to do with him. We'll see his mother later in the series, but until then, let's continue on with this episode. Carl, he's stuck at his house. The robots are looking for him. They need him. What do they need him for?
So, yeah, I need some water.
Yes, I'm completely parched.
Yeah, we all crave water.
Well, I thought you robots don't drink water.
No, but sometimes we do. There is a hole in the Damn it, he passed.
Now, dear, just take it easy.
See you in an hour.
They needed to give him another test, and it's the same exact test they gave him previously. This time, Carl passed. He's a smart fella. He stumped the robots, but he's got another test coming up in an hour. You'll hear some background noise in that clip, just some wheel sounds. We basically have the kid robots just mindlessly moving around in the background, like they're slamming into each other and stuff. It's funny visuals, and I love that they're not really doing anything. It's just like stupidity. But you'll hear that. Also, one of the robots, the kid robots, I don't know if I mentioned this, but the kid robots are all different colors. This little blue robot comes up and clips one of Carl's speakers. He clips the wires, and you hear some electrical noises. Now, that wouldn't happen in real life if you clip those wires, but it happens here. A fun aspect of this episode being higher definition, it's in 1080p, is we could appreciate Carl's badass stereo system more. And I've always said it, he's got a nice setup here, but I like the way that Bob Pettit gave Carl 2 components that are silver and then 2 that are black. And that's very common in the audio gear world. Those are the 2 most common colors that you'll find things in. I like that Carl kind of mixed and matched here. I'm currently going through and upgrading my speaker setup just a little bit, nothing crazy, but years ago I bought just the cheapest active speakers I could afford on Amazon, like $100 pair. So now I'm going through and just upgrading a little bit what I have, because it's like, I got all these records and stuff, and then I'm playing them through some little shitty speakers. Time to upgrade. So I've been dealing with that too, of seeing components that are black and some that are silver. And so I just bought a silver Yamaha amplifier. So now it's like I'm going to be locked in going forward. Like if I add a CD player or something, to wanting it to be silver. Or I can just go with Carl here and just do the zebra stripe. He doesn't really seem to care. But Carl, he's got 4 components here. I could see a tape deck. I could see what I'm guessing is a CD player. And then one is an amplifier. The other one I'm guessing would be a tuner, which is like a radio. He's got 4 components here. That's what I would think he would have, unless he has duplicates for whatever reason. I'll have to reach out to Bob about this. Maybe he has some sort of method to Carl's audio setup here. But yeah, it's fun seeing that. And the amplifier I bought, guess where it's from? You don't even have to guess. It's from New Jersey. Full circle, baby. Carl, he got his speaker clipped, poor guy. The robots want to see him in an hour for his next test, but he's going to make another phone call. He's going to try calling the Aqua Teens.
Come on, pick up, man. Pick up, pick up, pick up.
Hi, this is Frylock. I'm not able to answer your call right now because I'm currently being cocooned by military spiders in a cave in the Mojave Desert. At the sound of the tone, please leave a message.
At the sound of the tone? Wouldn't it just be at the tone?
Shut up, Shake. I like to be thorough, okay?
Damn it. Damn it.
Has it been an hour yet?
No.
I'm so sorry. I'm so rude.
Robot's very excited to give Carl his test. But yeah, we heard from Frylock and Master Shake very briefly here. And I love Frylock's like, yeah, we're cocooned in the Mojave Desert. He's just stating what we already know. It's very funny. But that's our one moment of Aqua Teens here. And them doing these 3 episodes, right, specifically focusing on Carl and a little bit this new character of Markula, who, again, we will see more of, I couldn't help but wonder what led Matt and Dave to this. So I asked Matt Maiellaro, hey, could you bring us back to that time? Like, why do you think that you guys did these 3 episodes without the Aqua Teens? What led to that?
I'm sure it was just the fact that we got tired of, we just wanted to try something new. You know, you always know Shake's going to come out and be his bombastic dick self, and Meatwad's going to be the cute one, and Frylock's going to be the mom. I'm sure we were just trying to refresh, you know, get away from that and then come back to it later. Like, it's just like the title, you know, we kept changing the title because we got bored with that and the theme song. So I don't really have a real answer as to why we did it that way, but that could have been the reason. I mean, that was 16 years ago.
Matt's right. It was 16 years ago. I couldn't tell you what I did at work 16 days ago, and I'm asking these guys what they were doing 16 years ago at their job. But yeah, Matt kind of going into, they were maybe just a little bit bored of the Aqua Teens. They wanted to reset with this Carl trilogy, but that didn't stop them from giving us a little bit of Aqua Teens right here. And a spoiler forewarning to what's coming up in this podcast, I asked Dave Willis basically the same question, so we'll hear from Dave a little bit later. To that clip, though, a funny visual thing is Carl, he picks up the phone to his head, and then he dials the phone with his face, basically. It's very strange. It's such an interesting choice for them to do this, but you see Carl's face kind of moves as you hear it dialing on the phone. This phone being a nondescript kind of beige color phone, and in fact, honestly, I don't think there's even buttons on the phone that he's picking up. Like, it would be over on the receiver, maybe, that the phone should go on. I don't see any buttons on this phone, but regardless, he dials it on the phone with his face, calls the Aqua Teens, they're not there. So hey, nothing that they can do to help poor Carl. He's got to pass these tests on his own, and the best way to pass a test is to try and not take it. We're going to cut outside. Carl is going to be hiding inside of 2 Wicked while the robots are destroying his house, picking it apart completely. Carl's trying to lay low, but unfortunately, they're going to spot him.
I have peeled this house like a banana, and still nothing. Possibly gone. I have absolutely nothing to do.
Now, honey, we still have the tests.
Well, I guess I won't get to do them, will I? All my work down the space stream. Something moved. Inside the car. Test the knob.
Locked!
Damn him. The glass is tinted and impenetrable.
Right, all right, I'm coming out. No, get off there! That's a friggin' special order.
Oh!
That's the robots jumping on top of Carl's car and on the hood of the car. He comes out. He wants to spare 2 Wicked. He'll let them pick his house literally apart. Like, it's just the wood frame at this point. And he's fine with that, but not his sweet 2 Wicked. I can't blame him. It's a nice car. Going back to this point, though, that I made previously is I like in Aqua Teen that the characters have to bother Carl. And we're seeing that here in full force, in full Aqua Teen Hunger Force, because these robots, like, sure, they've spent some time with Carl, but they pick his house apart looking for him. They can't find him, and they're so distraught. And if this were real life, they would just go and find somebody else to annoy, right? If they're just bored and want to harass somebody, they just move on. But in this world, it's like, oh, it has to be Carl. We have to find Carl, which is just so absurdly hilarious and makes you feel bad for Carl, but also kind of laugh at him at the same time. So let's jump into the second test now. He's out of the car. He's ready for it. They're going to put the diode on his head, but really, the diode, well, it's just a glazed donut.
How's it going? Where you been, man?
I've been on the moon.
Okay, the moon, wow. Apply the diodes. You will feel no pain.
You will feel no pain.
But you must sit very still.
You must sit very still.
Ring this bell when the flies come.
Ring this bell when the flies come.
Okay. Is this a test?
Yeah, it's a test. Sure. See you in 1 hour.
Okay, I got a B. Does a B count? Hey.
No, only flies.
Only flies!
We have had legendary arguments with flies!
Carl's saying that he was on the moon, which sounds like nonsense, right? But if you'll remember, Season 1, Episode 4, Mayhem of the Moonanites, Carl ends up on the moon after he gets hit by the quad laser. So Carl has been on the moon, so it's really not as nonsensical as I think this was even supposed to be, because he has been on the moon. I don't think that Matt and Dave were intending that. I think it's just funny that he has been on the moon previously. And there might be other times, too, that I'm not recalling. But certainly we saw back in the 4th episode of the show, he's been there, he's done that. But what he hasn't done is this test that they're going to do, and this being that typical Aqua Teen, Matt and Dave, just stupidity, where they're putting a donut on his head, they hand him a bell, like a handbell, and we saw these bells earlier in the episode when Carl was on the phone with his mom. The robots were ringing these, and you have to wonder where they got these old-timey looking bells from. But he's supposed to ring that once flies show up. A bee shows up in that clip, but that's not good enough for the robots. They need it to be actual flies. From there, we get a time cut. It's sometime later, and at this point, Carl, he's covered in bees and ants. He has, like, lines of ants walking up to him, and he has bees all over his face. Unfortunately, though, that's not good enough for the robots.
Hey, look! Insects! I did good, right?
Yeah, again, not flies. Why didn't you call flies like I asked?
Well, you didn't tell me to call the
Yeah, I
friggin'.
did. That's why we gave you the bell.
All right, let's be clear about this. You told me to use the bell when a fly showed up, not to use the bell to call the fly.
Silly human. See? I'm pretty sure the flies are on their way. You failed the final test. And now you die.
No, Carl's gonna die. He failed the test. He couldn't summon the flies. I love when Matt and Dave write these nonsensical characters and then have another character point out how nonsensical they are. Carl's like, well, you didn't tell me that was supposed to conjure them. I was just supposed to ring it when they were there. That's what you told me, right? So it's just pure stupidity, and I love the way that Matt and Dave kind of acknowledge that in the writing that way. But it's very sad here. Carl, he failed the second test, all right? He did know that robots don't need water no matter what they say. But unfortunately, well, he couldn't summon the flies. That's not good enough. They're going to threaten to kill him now. But Carl, he gets out of it. He's got a test of his own. Carl's going to pull out the classic count the bullets test, and he's going to pull out a giant minigun and just blast them robots away.
No. I still got one more test here. I got a test for you.
We don't take tests.
Yeah, but this one's super easy. It's called count the bullets.
Well, we're not good at math. 15,943. Do more. More. They're like vitamins to us.
Yeah.
So that is Carl. He's blasting the robots, like I said. And it's funny because the reveal of him having that minigun, he's got the bee beard, he's got the donut on his head, he's got ants crawling on him. Well, Carl just kind of ducks out of frame and then comes back up with the minigun, but he also had a wardrobe change as well. He pops back up donning he has like a red bandana kind of thing around his head, but also he's got a holster with a pistol on it on his side. He has a strap with 3 grenades across his chest, and then he has what seems like at least a day's worth of ammo. He's just got bullets on bullets here. He's got bullets sashed around him. He's got bullets leading down to the ground. Infinite bullets here for Carl, and he's blasting through these robots. And then that clip, I faded it out because that sound goes on, that dramatic music with the minigun blasting. That sound stage keeps going while the credits then come up. So we don't have our traditional outro music here. It's our same exact end sequence with the credits, like visually, but we have the sound of Carl just raining down on these robots, finally getting his revenge. You have to stop and wonder, well, why didn't he do this sooner in the episode? But he's doing it now. That music, by the way, is called First Strike. It was composed by Klaus Bedelt, and it is from the album Action, which is just a compilation of action-sounding music for television. It looks like it was also used in the Squidbillies episode Tween Stream. So shout-outs to Video Killed the Radio Star over on YouTube for finding that. Link in the show notes to this podcast episode if you would like to hear this song on its own. So hey, that is Robots Everywhere. Before I give you any sort of final thoughts on this one, let's go talk to our friend Dave Willis a little bit and see what Dave has to say specifically about writing this trilogy of episodes, because they initially had a little bit different of an idea for how they wanted to write episodes that weren't focused on the Aqua Teens.
This season, I remembered us thinking, what are we going to do different here? And there was a thought that we could have the characters move away, move out of the house. You don't follow them, and you just stay in the house with whoever moves in. And then over the course of a few episodes, those people slowly morph into the Aqua Teens. And that would have been great, but I think that would have tested the patience of a lot of people. So we didn't do that, but that was at least the initial taking off spot for Robots Are Everywhere.
Dave revealing here something very interesting, that they had this initial idea, the Aqua Teens are gone, right? Which is what they do here. But that some other people would move in and then slowly turn into the Aqua Teens, which an implication there is like, well, were the Aqua Teens the original Aqua Teens at that point? It gets kind of heady in a way and a lot more involved than the show normally is. Now, again, we know they didn't go with that, but that was the idea for this series of episodes, not focusing on the Aqua Teens. Some trivia here for you. Back in the Rabot Rough Cut, this being the version that we can see on the Volume 1 DVD, where it's this way rougher, earlier version of Rabot, Carl reveals that the people who lived in the Aqua Teens house before the Aqua Teens were called the Surhoffs. Carl just mentions that offhand.
It is crushed to bejesus and back.
Have you gotten any estimates?
I just found it this way. Nothing like this used to happen when the Surhoffs lived over there.
So kind of funny, because if they did go with this idea that the house turns whoever lives in it into the Aqua Teens, that the Surhoffs would have became the Aqua Teens at some point. Obviously, this is super in the weeds kind of stuff, but hey, it's fun to talk about. What would you rather me talk about, your dad's balls again or my grandpa dying in Vietnam? Dave said something else in that clip that I want to address. Dave referred to this episode as Robots Are Everywhere, and he did refer to the episode as both to me, both Robots Are Everywhere and just Robots Everywhere, which is what we know it as. I have seen the episode listed in like one or two places. I can't find it now, of course, but I've seen it listed as Robots Are Everywhere, but I think that was kind of just like a working title for the episode, because everywhere else, including back in 2007 on the Zombie Ninja Pro-Am disc, it is called Robots Everywhere. So that is the official name, but I think Robots Are Everywhere was like a working title. But Dave goes on to tell us how they got the name for this episode. I mean, besides the fact that literally there are robots everywhere in the episode.
And the title is from a very dumb joke that never... The original Onion guys who came out to Hollywood, they've all gone on to do amazing things, work on The Simpsons and Futurama and etc. But they had done a 60 Minutes type show, satirical. It was very silly. And there was one shot in it that I always remember. This never aired. I think Fox gave them the money to make this, but all these people in these boxy robot suits in the background, and the reporter is just saying, robots everywhere. It's just a quick cut, and I think that's where the title robots everywhere came from.
Dave letting us know here that the title on this one was inspired by a joke in an unaired pilot that was made by some of the writers on The Onion. And The Onion, if you're unfamiliar, it is a satirical kind of a magazine at one point. Now it's probably just a website. I don't entirely know. But Aqua Teen having a bit of a shared history with The Onion in some circumstances. For example, Season 3, Episode 12's Hypnogerm features a fair amount of Onion writers as voices on that one. Todd Hansen, who is a big Onion writer, showed up in Season 1, Episode 15's Interfection. Todd even suggested the characters Chicken Biddle and Napkin Lad, and he goes on to voice Napkin Lad. So lots of involvement between The Onion and Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and makes sense Dave would have seen one of those unaired pilots and gotten a good laugh from it. So thanks, Dave, for shining some light on that. Looking forward to hear what Dave has to tell us about future episodes this season. That's a little teaser for you. So, okay, before I give you my final thoughts on Robots Everywhere, let's talk about the reaction to this episode over on the Toon Zone forum back in January of 2008. As always, a link to this in the description to this podcast episode if you want to read this yourself. And the reaction here was pretty dang negative. Before we get into the reactions, very quickly, worth mentioning that you could see this episode on Friday, January 18th over at adultswim.com back in the day, 2 days before it airs on Adult Swim. So I do want to mention that here, and that usually is the case at this point in time because Adult Swim is playing around with internet streaming and they're letting you watch some of these episodes before they officially air. Although, again, with robots everywhere, you could already see it back in 2007. But worth mentioning there. So on to our reactions. My God, are they negative? These are some of the most resoundingly negative reactions to an Aqua Teen episode I've seen yet. People did not like this one. Our very first review here is Moto Pete coming in on the 18th saying, wow, that is the worst episode ever. Moto Pete not a fan. Many others not fans as well. John Johns says, man, what the hell was that? The whole show was just some robots harassing Carl? Why did they make this? There wasn't even anything funny about this at all. The ending was stupid, and it just droned on and on with pointless exchange after pointless exchange between Carl and the robots. And there wasn't even an ending. No wonder they originally relegated this crap to an extra feature on a video game. Don East comes in afterwards saying, I feel sorry for any poor sucker that watched this crap hole in the video game. So lots of people very unhappy here, and I'm excited to see if these same characters show up complaining in the next few episodes that are more based on Carl here. Classic Speedy comes in with a more reasonable response. Classic Speedy says, it wasn't that great. Not the worst episode ever, but far from the best. The robots' antics were pretty much devoid of wit, and the episode lacked an ending. I know Aqua Teen Hunger Force isn't a show known for traditional storytelling, but come on. What happened to the robots? Will they still live there in the next episode? If not, that would make this episode fairly pointless, serving only as an unamusing showcase of pissing off Carl. That said, Carl trying to sell the house to the normal couple in the first couple minutes was classic, especially the holes in the wall where he could peep at the guy's wife. And it was kind of interesting to see neighbors that were actually worse than the Aqua Teens ever were, as the robots had no voice of reason like Frylock. I bet Carl misses the three foods. So pretty reasonable response there, I think, not raging at the episode, but pointing out some issues with it, but also mentioning some things that Classic Speedy liked. Let's jump to the opposite end of the spectrum, though. Let's go to people who liked this one, because there certainly were some who enjoyed this episode chiming in. Maxi Zeus says, sorry guys, but I disagree. I like this one quite a bit. The show has always been completely random and often has been about some character, Carl in this case, driven progressively crazier by another character's increasing stupidity. Desensitized chimes in with, wow guys, I thought it was pretty good. Not one of the top 10 best or anything, but it was pretty solid. Got two more for you I want to read. We have Punisher saying, the ending alone made this episode awesome, although the rest of it wasn't awful like the others seem to think. Nice reference to Willie Nelson too. Weird to see continuity in Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Punisher here, enjoying that Willie Nelson reference, as did I, of course. I mean, we talked about that earlier in the podcast, but I do need to mention to you, okay, Punisher, his profile pic is Willie Nelson. So, hey, we have a bit of conflict of interest here. I think there's a bit of a finger on the scale with Punisher's review on this one and the Willie Nelson love, but I'm not mad about it. Last comment I want to read, and honestly, if you're going to read any comments about these episodes, about when they came out, this is a good one. Do check that link in the description to this episode, because these are pretty interesting to go through. But the last one I'm going to read for you here is Joe Bias, who says, you know, I liked it a lot and thought it was funny, but I still kind of miss the main characters. Are they really doing it just to piss off the normal group of Adult Swim fans who get easily angered? If they are, then this episode is even funnier. So Joe Bias kind of speculating, oh, maybe this is Matt and Dave wanting to annoy people by not having the Aqua Teens. And I don't think that is the case. Now, certainly if I didn't have the opportunity to talk to both Matt and Dave about this episode, I would have been on Joe Bias's side and my mind would have went there as well. But neither of them alluded to that at all. Really, I think what this was, and this is going into my thoughts now, is Matt and Dave, we've talked about it a lot on the podcast, they get bored with formulas. They get bored doing these same things over and over again. We've seen that throughout Aqua Teen. For example, Season 3's Spacegate World, where it's mostly about Carl. Yeah, we have some Aqua Teens there, and we have Meatwad's dolls, which are a great part of that one, so it feels more like an Aqua Teen episode than Robots Everywhere. But that's what that was. They were kind of tired of just writing for the Aqua Teens, so they did that. With Hypnogerm, Also, that same season, the previous episode, they were tired writing for the Aqua Teens, so they had this fake play go on inside of Shake. In season 4, we had the Bart Oates episode, which is very Carl-centric. Again, we get some Aqua Teens, but it's more about Carl. Matt and Dave do this a lot. In fact, I've mentioned before, the only reason we have Aqua Teen Hunger Force is because Matt and Dave got tired writing for Space Ghost. That's why they came up with these characters. And we're seeing that here. Matt and Dave did 4 seasons of the show, which really amounted to almost 6 years of working on the show, since the Rabot episode took almost a year to make. 6 years of working on the show, but beyond that, they made the video game, they made the film. Matt and Dave seemingly just kind of wanted to do something different for a little bit. They wanted a bit of a break, and you heard that in those previous clips I played for you. So this wasn't them trying to piss off a 14-year-old Ronnie sitting on the couch watching a new Aqua Teen episode. This was them just trying something different. Of course, we know now we do get back to normal Aqua Teen episodes in just a few episodes here after this one. Knowing what this episode is and what this trilogy is really helps me enjoy it more, right? It's easier to go into something when you know what it is. So had I known ahead of time when this episode first came on in 2008, when I first saw it, had I known that's what it was going to be, maybe I would have given it more of a chance. Maybe I would have liked it more, because covering it for the podcast here, I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. There's actually a lot of just normal Aqua Teen things happening here, maybe in slightly different ways, but ultimately it has all the pieces to a normal Aqua Teen episode. It's just missing the Aqua Teens themselves. And of course, if that makes you dislike this episode, I totally get it, right? It's called Aqua Teen Hunger Force, not The Carl Show. But to have more episodes based on Carl when we have so many just about the Aqua Teens, I can appreciate that at this point in time. I do like the flow of this episode. I feel like there's a lot of things happening here. It's kind of segmented into 3 parts. Or maybe you could even argue 4. So the first part is when Carl's showing it to Vishal and Divya, which is great. I love that segment. Then they just get killed and the robots come in, so maybe that you could consider its own part. But ultimately, we have the segment of Carl showing the house, which all of that I enjoy. Then we get the second segment of Markula showing up. So we're introduced to a new character. We get this lore on the show. We learn who owns the Aqua Teens house. We knew they rented. We just never knew from who. So it's nice to get that answered up here. As for Markula as a character, I can't say I'm super familiar with him simply because I haven't seen a ton of the episodes he's in. Again, because I kind of bounced once they introduced him. So I don't really have any thoughts on Markula, but I love Matt, obviously. So I'm interested to see where he takes it. Interested to see where that character goes. Markula here, he's fine. I don't think he's like a breakout character instantly, but he's not even supposed to be. He's just setting up more of this trilogy, explaining why the Aqua Teens were gone, right? Like, it's really funny, actually, the way he asks Carl, like, oh, have you seen the food? And then he goes on to say, oh, well, actually, I know where they are. I had them taken away because of this gas leak. Like, that is pretty funny. So I am interested to see more Markula. And then after he's gone, the episode is really about the robots bothering Carl and bugging him until the very end. Carl gets his revenge on them, which is not something that typically happens. Like, you would have expected this episode to end with them just killing Carl, right? So many episodes end that way. But here it's fun because Carl does kind of a badass thing where he blows them away with the Gatling gun, Rambo style. And that kind of brings me back to season 1, episode 8's Revenge of the Mooninites, because that is another rare example where Carl kind of saves the day in that one. If you don't remember, I'm sure you do, but if you don't, Carl defeats the Mooninites by harnessing the Foreigner belt. He don't need no instructions to know how to rock. He gets rid of them. He saves the day. And that's kind of the case here. He doesn't save the Aqua Teens from whatever Markula has done to them, and we'll see more of that going through these episodes. But he does stop the robots. I mean, you don't know just by watching this episode, but in the next one, Sirens, the robots aren't back. So I do enjoy what it goes through. Like, for a Carl-centric episode, I think this is well done. I understand if you miss the Aqua Teens, I do too. But for a Carl-centric episode, I think this is a good time. Regarding our villains here, I like the robots. They make me laugh a lot throughout the episode, but they do something interesting, which is they're kind of taking the place of the Aqua Teens, right? They're almost like this Aqua Teen stand-in terms of being Carl's neighbors. And it's because of these robots that it really makes Carl come to appreciate the Aqua Teen. So I thought that was interesting, the way they use these classic, dumbass, annoying villains to make Carl miss the Aqua Teen. So I like the villains here. They're not like my favorite, but I really didn't appreciate the robots until paying attention to this episode for this podcast. So, looking at this through the lens of what it is, knowing that it is this Carl-centric episode, you know, when I sat down to watch this, I put out of my head, like I knew, okay, the Aqua Teens aren't here, just enjoy this for what it is. I had a really good time with this one. I liked this episode a lot, and surely I liked it much more than other episodes with the Aqua Teens. For example, I like this way more than Dickisode last season. I like it more than Munawana last season. I think if you don't penalize this episode for not having the Aqua Teens and just try and enjoy the writing and stuff for what it is, I think it's a good time. I don't think it's a boring episode. It's got a good pacing, some really funny jokes. I like it, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So I gotta give this one 4 glazed diodes out of 5, and that's a really dang good score. Not one I expected to give this episode, but again, watching through it, I can't find any faults. Like, yeah, the Aqua Teens aren't in it, but just throwing them in it wouldn't necessarily have made it better. I liked what it did. If this one was too out there for you, I totally get that, but I think we can all agree, at the very least, at least Carl gets a badass ending here, which is not something he gets all the time. That is it for me this week. So excited to be back and continue to go through this season, particularly the other 2 episodes we have next, Sirens and Couples Skate, that wrap up this trilogy. Excited to see where they go with it, see what it does. Gotta give some thanks to the fellas, Dave Willis and Matt Maiellaro, for contributing to this one. You can find Dave over on Instagram at Dave Willis Shake Table, and you can find Matt Maiellaro on Twitter at Matt Maiellaro. Links to both of those in the description. Of course, give them fellas a follow if you're not already. Thank you for listening to this, for hanging out with me for almost 2 hours, blabbering on about this one. And hey, let me know what you think of this one. I'm going to put a post up on Instagram corresponding to this podcast episode. Would love to know how you feel about Robots Everywhere, particularly if you're like me and if you didn't like this one at first and then you came to enjoy it. But most of all, above anyone else, I have to thank the supporters of this podcast, the Moonmasters over at patreon.com/dancing-is-forbidden, for supporting this show every single month and enabling me to continue to make this. If it wasn't for them, this podcast wouldn't exist. Gotta shout out our Highlander Nick.
There can be only one!
There's only one Nick, just like at this point in our Aqua Teen timeline, there's only one episode where we don't hear from Meatwad. Of course, shout out to our number 1 in the Hood G tier supporters, Sean, Ian, Captain Buford, Robinson, Jason, Carl, Lecheratone 69, Empower 706, Swimwiki, Lurvinator, Thorin the Grumpy Dwarf. Thanks again, Thorin, for signing up. Garrick, Jonathan, Calixto, Tom, Luz, and UK no Tamashi. You guys can stay at the VA hospital any day of the week. I'll see you August 19th when we're diving through Sirens. Till then, keep it cool, take it easy, bye-bye.
Dancing is forbidden. Dancing is forbidden.
I mean, speaking of the voice, though, because you mentioned, is your voice pitched up, Markula is your voice pitched down, Cybernetic Ghost is you ran through some sort of modulator, like a vocoder or something.
Oh, yeah.
In the 2004 season, we had you playing yourself as a delivery man, delivering Chinese food to Carl.
Yeah.
And you show up as yourself once or twice after that. Is it maybe a little, do you feel maybe vulnerable doing lines where it's just you, like without any sort of effect?
No, it's just that I don't really do voices. You know, I'll do my own voice. I mean, Mouse is just me. like in low
Yeah, that's a
mode,
good point.
low power mode.
Power saver mode, yeah.
And I actually started doing mouse's scratch, and then we just kept it. But no, I have no issues doing it, but I just don't do impressions. So that's why most of the time I'm going through some machine.
Right.
But I do you do get into a mindset, as like I think any VO person, and I'm not a VO person, but when I go in and do I mean, I'm saying stuff I'm just like, I've just become this other thing. You know what I mean? And I think of things to say as that I would never just say as Matt. and same thing with cybernetic ghosts. I just get into that meandering mode when I'm doing him, and it just works. And with Markula, you know, it's just kind of a mindset and become a get away from me. And I'm not even talking like I'm a big theater person, but it really does happen. In fact, when I'm in there doing I have to be able to hear it, the effect, or I can't do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because it just become that thing, that little purple drunk thing. He's so pissed off.
Yeah.
And then I get out and my throat hurts because I've been yelling. And